What are the first 10 tools a beginner woodworker should actually buy? And in what order? So you stop wasting money on the wrong ones like I did. Because I bought mine in almost exactly the wrong order. Big and flashy first, and it cost me a couple $1,000s I did not have to spend. I have run a garage shop for more than 25 years, and I started it the way most guys do, by walking into a home center and buying the biggest saw I could carry, because that is what a workshop looks like in your head. That was a mistake, and it set me back years and real money. This list is the order I wish somebody had handed me on day one. It is sequenced on purpose, cheapest and most essential first, biggest and most intimidating last, because you can build actual projects long before you own the tool everybody thinks they need first. Stay with me to the end, because the 10th tool is the one every beginner runs out and buys on day one, and I am going to tell you why it should be the last thing you buy, not the first. And right in the middle is the cheapest tool on this whole list, the one that decides whether your finished work looks handmade or homemade. One thing before I start, so nobody counts and calls me out. The first item is technically two tools, a tape measure and a square, and I am counting them as one, because they are the foundation, and together they cost less than a tank of gas. Everything after that is a single tool, in order. Number one, then, is a good tape measure and a combination square. This is where every project you will ever build actually begins, and it is the cheapest entry on the list, which is exactly why beginners skip past it toward the power tools. Do not. A combination square, which is just a ruler with a sliding head that locks at a true 90 and 45 degrees, is the tool you check every cut and every corner against. And here is the thing nobody tells you. A brand new square straight off the rack can be out of true, meaning its 90 degrees is not actually 90. There is a 1-minute test. Hold the square against a straight board edge. Draw a line along the blade, then flip the square over to the other face, and draw again from the same spot. If the two lines land right on top of each other, your square is true. If they splay apart into a little V, the square is off, and it will throw every joint you cut for as long as you own it. I trusted a cheap square for 15 years that was out by a hair, and it explained a decade of joints that never quite closed. A Stanley tape and a decent square run you maybe $25 together, and they are the most important $25 in this video. One more thing on the tape that trips people up. Cheap tapes and expensive tapes can disagree with each other by 1/16 of an inch, about the thickness of a stacked nickel or two, so pick one tape and use that same one for a whole project. And the little metal hook on the end is supposed to wiggle. That is not a defect, and it is not worn out. It slides exactly the thickness of the hook, so it reads correctly whether you are hooking over an edge or butting into an inside corner. Plenty of people crimp that hook tight, thinking they are fixing it, and then wonder why every measurement is off by 1/16. 2 on the list is a cordless drill and driver, and this is the first power tool almost every woodworker actually reaches for. It drives screws, it bores holes, and you will pick it up more than anything else on this list, probably more than everything else combined. My advice: buy one good bear drill from a name brand, a DeWalt, a Makita, a Milwaukee, in the 18 or 20 volt range, instead of one of those big combo kits that throws in 5 tools you do not need yet to make the price look good. A single quality drill is around $100 with a battery, and it will outlast the cheap kit and hold its value. Buy the battery platform you can grow into, because once you own 2 batteries of one brand, you tend to buy the rest of your cordless tools to match, and that is fine. That is the system working. Buy a basic set of drill bits and driver bits alongside it, another $20, because a drill with nothing to put in it is a paperweight. Look for a 1/2-inch chuck, which is the jaw at the front that grips the bit, because it takes bigger bits than the smaller 3/8 size. And a beginner tip that saves a lot of split boards. Drill a pilot hole, a small hole about the size of the solid core of your screw without the threads, before you drive a screw near the end of a board, or that board splits right down the grain on you. The battery on one of these weighs a couple pounds, about like a full water bottle, so a middle-size 18-volt is easier on your wrist across a long day than the biggest, heaviest one on the shelf. Number 3 is a circular saw, and this is the tool that quietly replaces the giant table saw everybody thinks they need on day one. A circular saw is the handheld saw with the round blade that you push through the wood, and its whole gift to a beginner is breaking down big material. A full sheet of plywood is 4 feet by 8 feet, about the size of a door laid flat, and wrestling that onto a table saw by yourself is dangerous and miserable. A circular saw cuts it down to manageable pieces right on your sawhorses. And here is the part that saves you $1,000. Clamp a straight board to your workpiece as a guide, run the saw along it, and you get a cut nearly as straight and clean as a track saw, which is the fancy $400 version of the same idea. A solid circular saw is about $70. With a clamped straight edge, it does maybe 80% of what the big saws do, and it does it before you have spent big money or given up half your garage. Two things make a cheap circular saw cut like a good one. The blade on a standard saw is 7¼ inches across, about the size of a saucer, and the first upgrade nobody mentions is throwing away the blade it ships with, and spending $20 on a good 40-tooth blade. A good blade on a cheap saw beats a cheap blade on an expensive saw every single time. And set your cut depth so the blade pokes only about 1/4 inch below the wood, roughly the depth of a pencil eraser, because a blade hanging way down low is just more exposed blade waiting to grab and kick the saw back at you. I learned to clamp a straight edge only after ruining a good sheet of birch plywood freehanding a cut I swore I could hold straight. I could not, nobody can, clamp the guide. 4 is a random orbit sander, and this is where the finish quality on everything you build actually gets decided. A random orbit sander is a power sander with a round pad that both spins and wobbles at the same time, and that random motion is what keeps it from leaving a repeating scratch pattern. Get the 5-inch size with hook and loop pads, which are the sandpaper discs that stick on like Velcro, and make sure it has a dust port you can hook to a vacuum, because sanding dust is the stuff you do not want in your lungs. Here is why this earns a spot this early, ahead of tools that seem more exciting. Bare wood hides a multitude of sins. You can sand poorly, look at the dry wood and think it is smooth as glass. Then you wipe on a finish, and every scratch and swirl you left behind drinks that finish darker and lights up like a road map, and by then it is too late. The finish does not create those marks. It reveals the ones already there. A good random orbit sander is around $60, and it saves you from that heartbreak on every single project. Buy a variety pack of discs with it, 80 grit for knocking down rough spots, 120 and 180 for the middle, and 220 to finish, because each grit is only there to erase the scratches left by the one before it. Skip from 80 straight to 220, and you are just polishing over the deep scratches until they hide on dry wood, and then the finish drags them right back into the light. Let the sander's own weight do the work. Lean on it, and you leave little swirl marks, pigtails, that you will not see until the finish is on, and it is too late to fix easily. Ask me how I know that one. We are just about at the halfway point, and this is a good spot to say the thing this whole list is built around. You do not need to spend $3,000 to start woodworking. You need to spend a few hundred, in the right order, and start building. Every tool so far has been under about $100, and with just these you can already build real things. A bookshelf, a workbench, a set of garage cabinets, a simple table, planter boxes, a cornhole set for the backyard. All of it is within reach of a drill, a circular saw, a sander, and something to clamp with. You are not waiting on the big machines to start. You are waiting on them to go faster, and that is a very different thing. Number 5 is a set of clamps, and every woodworker who has been at this a while just smiled, because the running joke is that you never have enough clamps, and the joke is true. Clamps are what hold your glued joints together while the glue cures. And here is the part beginners get wrong. A glue joint does not need to be crushed. It needs even pressure across the whole seam. You cannot get even pressure on a panel with 2 clamps. The middle bows away and the joint starves there. Start with at least 4 bar clamps or pipe clamps, something in the 24-inch range, about the length of your arm from fingertip to elbow and then some, so they can span a real glue-up. Bar clamps come ready to go. Pipe clamps are the budget move. You buy the cast jaws for about $15 a pair and screw them onto a length of plumbing pipe you buy separately, which lets you make them any length you want. 4 clamps to start is around $60 to $80, and you will buy more for the rest of your life. Everybody does. One trick stretches 4 clamps further than you would think. Lay a straight scrap board across the joint under the clamp, called a caul, and it spreads the pressure of 1 clamp across a wider span. So 4 clamps do the work of 6. And keep those steel bars off your fresh glue, because wet yellow glue reacts with the metal and leaves black stains down in the wood that you cannot sand out. A strip of wax paper laid between the clamp and the joint saves you that ugly surprise the next morning. 6 is a jigsaw, and this is the tool that gets you out of building nothing but squares and rectangles. A jigsaw has a thin blade that pokes down through the wood and moves up and down fast, and because the blade is narrow, you can steer it to cut curves. It is not a precision tool. Nobody cuts fine joinery with a jigsaw. What it does is open up shapes, cutouts, rounded corners, the sinkhole in a countertop, the curve on a shelf bracket, and you clean up the rough cut afterward with sandpaper or a router. It is cheap, about $60 for a decent one, and it earns its spot on this list not for precision, but for how much it opens up. The day you can cut a curve, half the projects you scrolled past suddenly become possible. The whole game with a jigsaw is the blade and your patience. A fine-tooth blade cuts slow and clean, a coarse one cuts fast and rough, and the trap is forcing the saw to feed faster than the blade wants to go. Push a thin blade too hard and it bows, and you get a cut that is square on top and slanted underneath, drifting maybe a quarter-inch out of square by the bottom edge, about the thickness of 2 stacked quarters. Blades are around $1 each, so keep a handful of fine and coarse on hand and match the blade to the job instead of fighting the wrong one. Number 7 is a set of chisels, and I want you to buy them the opposite of how the store wants to sell them to you. The store wants to sell you a 12-piece set in a nice wooden box. Do not. Buy 3 or 4 good chisels, a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, and a 3/4 inch, which covers almost everything a beginner cuts, and put the money you save toward learning to sharpen them, because here is the truth about chisels that took me 20 years to accept. You are not bad at chisel work. Your chisel is dull, and a dull chisel forces you to push, and the second you force it, it skates and dives and ruins the cut. A sharp chisel does the work for you. A set of 3 or 4 decent chisels like the Narex brand is around $50 to $60, and a basic sharpening stone is another $40. That is the whole kit, and it will do more than the 12-piece box that sits in a drawer dull forever. You will also want a wooden or a rubber mallet to drive them, about $15, because whacking a chisel handle with a steel claw hammer mushrooms the handle in no time. A 1/2 inch chisel, which is about the width of 2 stacked pencils, handles most of what a beginner needs, and the chisel earns its keep on the work a saw cannot do, paring a joint to fit, cleaning out the corner of a groove, shaving a hair off a tenon so it slides home. Keep the back flat and the edge sharp enough to shave hair off your arm. If it will not do that, it is not sharp enough to cut a clean joint, no matter how new and shiny it is. 8 is a router, and this is the cheapest looking upgrade that makes the biggest difference in how finished your work looks. A router is a motor that spins a cutting bit at high speed, and you guide it along an edge or across a surface. With different bits it rounds over sharp edges so they feel good in the hand. It cuts decorative profiles. It makes grooves called dados for shelves to sit in, and eventually it cuts real joinery. This is why it lands at number 8 and not number 2, even though it is a game of inches in how good your work looks. It is not the tool you build the structure with. It is the tool that takes a boxy, homemade-looking project and gives it the crisp, finished edges that make people ask if you bought it. A fixed base router or a combo kit runs about $100 to $150. This is the tool where your projects stop looking like shop class and start looking like furniture. A couple of router truths that protect your work and your fingers. The bit spins one direction, so you feed the router against that spin, which on the outside edge of a board means moving left to right, because going the other way, called a climb cut, lets the bit grab and yank the tool right out of your hands. Start with just 3 bits, a round over for softening edges, a straight bit for grooves, and a flush trim bit, about $30 together, instead of a 15-bit set where you will really only use 4. And take a deep profile in 2 shallow passes instead of 1 greedy pass. Or the bit chatters, burns the edge, and fights you. Slow and light wins with a router every time. Number 9 is a miter saw, and I can already hear some of you asking why this workhorse is all the way down at 9. A miter saw is a saw that pulls down to make fast, clean crosscuts, meaning cuts across the width of a board, and it pivots to cut precise angles for trim and picture frames and furniture parts. It is a wonderful tool, but look at what it does. It makes cross cuts and angle cuts. And you already own a circular saw at number 3 that makes those same cuts, just slower and with a little more setup. The miter saw is therefore a convenience and accuracy upgrade, not a capability you lacked, which is exactly why it waits until you have the essentials. When you do buy one, a 10 or 12-inch sliding compound miter saw, around $300 to $400, will cross-cut a board about 12 inches wide, roughly the length of a sheet of paper, in one pull, and it repeats that cut perfectly all day. It is the tool that makes building faster once you are already building. The one accessory that makes a miter saw sing is a stop block. Just a scrap block clamped to the fence so every piece you cut against it comes out the exact same length. That is how you cut 4 identical table legs or a stack of matching shelf pieces without measuring each one and stacking up little errors across the set. And do not trust the printed angle marks blindly. Cut 2 scraps at 45 degrees. Hold them together and check that they make a clean 90 against your square before you commit your good frame stock to that setting. That brings me to the last one, the 10th tool, and I saved it for the end on purpose because this is the exact tool almost every beginner runs out and buys first. The table saw. It is the heart of most serious shops. There is no argument there. It rips boards to width, meaning it cuts them down the long way, faster and more accurately than anything else, and once you have one, you use it constantly. So why is it last? 3 reasons, and they are the whole point of this video. It is the most money a good job site saw like a DeWalt is around $600, and a cabinet saw is far more. It takes the most space, a real chunk of your garage that you cannot get back, and it demands the most respect, because it is the tool most likely to hurt you badly if you rush it while you are still learning. Let me put a real number on that respect. The Consumer Product Safety Commission estimates tens of thousands of table saw injuries treated in American emergency rooms every year, and plenty of them are experienced people who got comfortable and stopped paying attention. That is not to scare you off the tool. It is to explain why it belongs at the end, after you have built enough that moving wood feels natural. When you are ready, a job site saw like the DeWalt DWE7491 at around $600 is a truly good first saw. Or you can hunt down a used older contractor saw, the heavy kind with a cast iron top, for a couple $100 secondhand, and it will outlast you. What matters is a dead flat top, a fence that locks parallel to the blade every time, and a saw you are not nervous to switch on. Buy the blade guard and a push stick with it, and actually use them, every cut, even the quick one you think you do not need it for. That is the cut that gets people. The reframe I want you to walk away with is simple. A beginner who runs out and drops $600 on a table saw first, before he owns a square he has tested or a chisel he can sharpen, has bought the roof before the foundation. With the 9 tools ahead of it, you can build real, finished projects while you save up and learn what you actually want in a saw, so that when you do buy one, you buy the right one once instead of a cheap one twice. Let me be straight about one thing, because a woodworker in the comments will say it if I do not. This order is my order, and it is built for a general beginner who wants to make furniture and shop projects. If you are a trim carpenter, your miter saw jumps to the front. If you are a turner, none of this order fits you. You are buying a lathe. If you only build with sheet goods, that circular saw and a couple of clamps might be almost all you ever need. So take this as a sensible default, not a commandment. The principle underneath it holds for everybody though. Buy the cheap, essential, safe tools first, get building, and let the big expensive machines wait until you have earned the knowledge to buy them well. None of this asks you to spend $3,000 before you make a single cut. Add it up. The tape and square, the drill, the circular saw, the sander, 4 clamps, a jigsaw, 3 chisels and a stone, a router. That entire kit lands somewhere around $500 to $600, which is the price of the single table saw most beginners run out and buy first, and it does 10 times as much for someone just starting. Add up everything ahead of the table saw, and you are into real woodworking for a few $100s, spent in an order that has you building almost immediately, instead of staring at a saw you are afraid to turn on. Buy the tape and the square this week. Test that square for true, and go make a straight cut. That is the whole beginning. right there. Next time I want to build a real first project using only the tools in the first half of this list, so you can see how much you can make before you spend the big money. Go make some sawdust.